Well, hello. I'm Pink Machine, and we're here with something definitely a little different. Um, in this specific video, I would like to discuss a question that is maybe a little controversial within the Create train community, within the Steam and Rails community, within the Extended Bogies community, within the Blocks and Bogies community especially, um, within the Create train sphere. Um, So the general question is, why should I texture my locomotives, right? Which I'd say is a fair question, right? Because real life locomotives tend to have more of a sleek appearance. Their colors tend to be a lot more flat, um, and the only texture really given is that of any kind of wear and tear or um, any kind of bolts or handrails or any kind of essentially like three-dimensional detailing. Okay, um, those tend to be the only real variation within real locomotives. And of course, paint schemes can have different variations as well. Like the British especially liked to paint their trains a lot more colorfully than those of the Americas, or those of rather the USA, not the Americas. I'm not sure why I keep saying that. um, but regardless, right? Trains tend to look a little bit flat, and really a lot of the marvel comes from the fact that they are entirely mechanical machines. They are not really electronic whatsoever. The only electricity you'd really find in a train comes from, I guess, the dynamo that powers the lights and several other appliances, but even then, the steam from the boiler is still powering that dynamo. They're still mechanical, and they're very fun to watch because you get to watch them in motion. You get to watch every single thing that happens to the train. You get to watch the steam fire out of the blowout. You get to watch the sand drop into the wheels. You get to watch the valve gear mechanism that's been tailored over 100 years um, just to make these wheels move in the most efficient way possible, right? Trains are very interesting in very specific ways, um, but, and this is where we get into our first point, right? Translating from real life one-to-one into Minecraft uh, does not work necessarily most of the time, right? Now, I'd like to specify, I mean one-to-one. I don't mean trying to create your own artistic interpretation. If anything, that's what I'm trying to specifically promote, right? Um, I don't like necessarily when I see a train that someone's built that is specifically tailored to be as close to the real thing as possible without them really trying anything interesting, right? They're not really trying much new. They're really just kind of painting exactly what they see without any sort of nuance. I believe that's a little bit boring, personally. I like to see some artistic interpretations of certain trains. I So this is the example that I'll give. Um, in a model of a locomotive, right, like a little HO scale, double O scale model, whatever you'd call it, um, typically they have like some sort of drawings of the locomotive to properly recreate it, but sometimes there is a little bit of guesswork, especially with some of those brass models, where the smoke box door might not be quite right, or the dynamo might be in the wrong place, or the number might be wrong, or something like that. Small details like that. I think those are fascinating because those are real people trying to fill in the blanks and do guesswork, right? And small details like that, like those, to me at the very least, don't matter as much, right? Um, trying to see where I'm going with this. Essentially, the idea is imperfection uh, makes art, right? Because if we always try to chase for something that is entirely perfect, that is entirely uh, exactly what we want it to be, then we're never going to be satisfied, unfortunately, right? because perfection is rare, and especially in a game like Minecraft where you are generally speaking going to be building the train out of blocks, it is very, very hard to recreate something at that scale, especially within create scale, right? That's another thing to bring up as well. Create scale specifically tends to promote trains that are 3 blocks wide with typically people call it 4 blocks wide because you have about half a block of room on either side. So 3 in the middle, half a block on either side. But you could also call it 5 wide, right? Typically that tends to be uh, the what would you call it? The minimum clearance level, right? Mm. I'm drinking a lovely peach tea with some honey and sugar. But I'm trying to remember what my point was. Essentially, Minecraft is a block game, and trying to recreate that level of detail exactly one to one is not going to work, right? So that is the first thing you have to get out of your head when you want to build a decent looking locomotive or a decent looking train or anything in Minecraft, honestly. This applies to anything. Of you have to let go of the idea that this has to be one to one to real life with no differences whatsoever. Because 90% of the time, um, what is wrong with your build is that you are trying to adhere to something specifically very much too hardly, right? Um, like so even in this set that I have right here, right? Um, so obviously you can see around me we have like a relatively simple bar setup, right? I've built this myself. And is it accurate? Not necessarily, right? I mean, we've got like a stove with a little tea kettle with a pipe above it. We've got all these empty glass bottles on shelves. We've got hoppers as uh, as sink basins as well, and we've got brewing stands here as well. Now, if we're making a bar that is entirely accurate to real life, we're not going to have brewing stands. We're probably definitely as well not going to have like a tea kettle like that. Now, of course, it depends on the bar. If you're going to more of a let's see, a coffee shop, then sure, they'll have access to heat like that. But most bars that you go to are maybe gonna have a plug-in induction burner for making syrups or something like that. Um, Most of the time, they're not going to have a dedicated heat pipe, especially, or a exhaust pipe just for the burner, right? It doesn't make any sense, but you know what? It looks nice. It's a detail. It is an interesting piece of the background, and that is my point with locomotives as well, is that you can simply detail them to your heart's consent. You can do what you like with them. You don't have to necessarily match things one to one. Okay? Now, the next point that I will make is that using flat locometal especially is boring, and a more diverse palette is more visually interesting. Now, this is of course a lot more up to the builder's interpretation, but specifically, I'd like to mention that flat locometal, when I put that in the Steam and Rails mod, specifically for uh, it was not meant to be used just as well, this is the default train texture. Not whatsoever. I put flat locometal in there back when framed blocks was still the primary way that people would, or primary mod that people would use for their trains, as opposed to Copycats Plus, because that came way, way, way later. Um, which framed blocks, I'm not sure if you're aware, does not support or does not consistently support connected textures very well, right? There are some instances where they kind of do maybe a little bit, but 90% of the time they don't. So, um, back then, I created flat locometal as a way to get around that because, well, sometimes you want blocks that kind of line up like that. And that's why locometal had some of its other quirks, like how the pillars didn't have ends on them, or how the smoke boxes, or the tanks rather, only had one side to them. So you could make them so they face towards each other, or you could put like a pillar in the middle or in between them or something like that, right? That's why certain blocks had borders and others didn't, is so that you could um, do what you want with a very limited mod. But as time went on, framed blocks essentially got dropped. Not entirely altogether. I'm sure there are definitely some people that still use it. Mm. But uh, as 5.1 came out, um, people started to use copycats, right? And then the copycats plus mod came out, and so now people have the freedom to essentially do whatever they want with connected textures. Um, But of course, I was generally barred from removing or like asking to have. Right, okay. I believe what happened was I had asked to remove the flat locometal at some point, but because that would create massive errors in people's builds, I was told that that it generally wasn't a good idea, and I was content with that. Um, I still don't like flat locometal personally, but flat locometal is not specifically meant to recreate the texture of trains. It was specifically meant to fill a niche, right? What is meant to recreate the texture of trains are the riveted and the slashed locometals, the ones that have connected textures, the ones with the borders, the ones that I am personally a lot more proud of as blocks, the ones that in the new update, mm, in the new Steam and Rails update, Kayla has gone and helped me update, right? Kayla, of course, being of, um, let's see, it was Create Deco fame. Um, she's a lovely person, and she was very helpful in pointing out a lot of Locometal's flaws, and she had her own insights as well. Um, and she did make most of the textures before I went through and edited them again. Like, so of course with Locometal I made the original textures, then someone else came in and made the second generation, and then we now have this third generation, which Kayla went and touched up, that I then went and touched up myself as well, and I threw in a bunch of my own textures on top of that. But anyways, my point being that flat Locometal um, is flat, right? I don't think I need to tell you, or like, I don't need to tell most competent builders or most people with very, very pristine looking trains that using one block for the entire train or for an entire section of the train is not necessarily nice looking, right? And that's why Locometal especially, or that's why Pretty in Pink and Locometal specifically have what would you call it? They have parity with other blocks in Create. Like, so the red locometal is meant to pair with Crimsite, the cyan locometal is Viridium, well, we now, especially in the Create mod, or sorry, in the new update of Steam and Rails, we have Dripstone, Granite, Diorite, the light gray is Andesite, we have Scorchia, we have Akram, blue is Azurine, and we have so many other colors to go through. And I'm even working on texture packs right now for more and better parity. Like already, I've one available that I could even link in the description if I'd like to. But I have one available that is specifically turning the maroon, uh, let's see, the maroon locometal into netherrack, or rather, the palette to closer match netherrack. Um, Yeah, so Locometal is meant to be paired with other blocks to begin with. It's not meant to stand on its own, and the same goes with Pretty in Pink. And I've seen people ask for a block for Pretty in Pink that has connected textures to kind of replace what Locometal does. And I am working on that because I think that's a fun concept, and I'd like to go and explore that. That is with the steel plating that I'm going through and adding at some point soon. But regardless, I like to promote creativity. I like to prop people up and give them opportunity where they're able. I like to give people the tools to be successful. And when people take the easiest route and take the, I guess, theoretically correct option, it disappoints me personally, right? I generally think that people would be better off if they explored their creativity, if they experimented with new things, as opposed to always going back to the same exact few things that they are used to, right? So you might be used to flat locometal now, but I genuinely would like to encourage you to go through and use whatever else Locometal has to offer. Go through and use another mod. Use Chipped, use Twigs, use Nature's Spirit, use Create Rechiseled, use what else? Go and use Create Deco, go use Create Design and Decor, right? Go use these other mods by wonderful people, or theoretically wonderful people. I'm not sure, I don't know who the creators are for some of these. I'm not going to fully ham fist that they're wonderful people, but wonderful mods by hopefully wonderful people, right? Um, I do know the people who made some of those mods. I know Kayla and I know Luna, and they're very lovely people. But the point is, essentially, um, have fun, right? Experiment, try new things. You don't have to go back to flat Locometal because it looks quote unquote correct and it looks easy. Once again, going back to our translating IRL point, like flat Locometal not only does not really look like what real trains look like because it's not as glossy, it's not as dark, it's not as saturated, I guess, as you would expect. It's very saturated, but it's not as saturated as you would expect. And again, it's not very necessarily shiny. It would need more contrast for it to properly match something like that. Um, but realistically, diverse palettes are better. In my more recent trains, I've been using Blackstone with Black Locometal and Pretty in Pink, despite the fact that the palettes don't really match entirely. And that's also the thing. So Pretty in Pink and Locometal are supposed to match relatively well, right? The palettes are the same, just slightly modified, but Pretty in Pink specifically uses the lighter side of the palette more, whereas Locometal uses the darker side of the palette more, right? It uses the darker side versus the lighter side, so they complement each other in that way, right? And that was fully intentional. And then the Blackstone is just something else that brings textures to the table that the other two really don't have. Blackstone, specifically for chipped, the textures are very smooth. There's so many of them that you can use essentially whatever you want in any place that you want, and it'll always have exactly what you need, right? So if you need a horizontal line, there you go. If you need like a little round bit to represent like some kind of valve, there you go. If you need specifically like a half panel to have like a little vertical like column piece or a pillar looking piece. There you go, right? You have literally endless possibilities with Blackstone, and I think it looks phenomenal, and I think if used right, then it can complement the black loco metal phenomenally. And I'm looking to make a texture pack at some point as well for black loco metal to be closer to Blackstone, but I'm unsure on all that. Um, I like how it complements it already. Anyways, so the last thing I'd like to bring up is artistic value and the idea of bringing something new to the table. Because there are a lot of very, very wonderful, talented train builders out there. I'll name a few for the hell of it, right? Teacup, Big T, um, let's see, Fern. We have, I would say, Polly. Polly is one that's very nice. Um, we'll go for Eternal. We'll go for Moxon. We'll go for um, who's another one I could think of? Ember Solus. These are people who operate within the community, who are generally good at their craft. People who are moderators in specific servers, sure, but do still know what they're doing. I would say, right? I'm trying to think of another one I could think of. Yup, it's Aiden, right? I believe they have a YouTube channel as well. Um, hmm, let's see. I'm sure I'm missing a few, right? But the point is, these people know what they're doing, and the reason they know what they're doing is because they've been doing it for a long time, and they've practiced their craft, and they have uniquely manifested an art style that fits them and what they want to do personally, right? Um, certain people lean more towards Locometal, certain people genuinely despise it. I think Fern is like a good example where they tend to not really enjoy the presence of Locometal too much. Um, Unless I'm confusing them for someone else, I'm unsure on that. But there are specific people who, despite the tools that I've given them, opt to not use those, and they opt to use their creativity to their strongest, and try to build things without them, like try to operate outside of the standard, right? And I think that's beautiful, right? Hmm. I think that's an amazing thing. I think that more people should be doing that. I think that that's awesome, right? And of course, again, I'm giving people the tools for success, but they're just the blueprints, right? And like, sure, you can interpret the blueprints as literally as possible, but as well, it's up to you to interpret them however you want, right? They are your blueprints, to do with as you please. Um, but generally speaking, like, obviously I'm not gonna go out there and say like, oh, you have to do something completely original, do something completely new that nobody's ever done before. No, that is kind of what art is all about. Is it is taking uh different ideas from different people and manifesting them in your own ways, right? So like this is how it comes with manifesting like a 2D art style, for example, right? Is like the idea is you go to different artists that you admire and you look at different ways that they draw things and kind of combine them and use your own ability to draw them in a specific way that meshes well together, right? So if one artist draws eyes in a way that you really like, then you can take that. If one artist draws hair in a way that you really enjoy, then you can take that as well. If one artist uses color in a very specific way that you think is fucking phenomenal, you can use that as well. You can learn how they do that. Same thing applies to trains, right? And I know like we're building fucking trains in Minecraft, it's not that deep, but still. um, the point is you can excel if you just try, right? Again, wrapping back around to our point about using a flat locometal is boring, it is boring because you're essentially, I don't want to say you're necessarily giving up, but you're not really trying. You're taking just the baseline easiest option and ham-fisting that all the way through, as opposed to going through and trying to experiment and see what works for you, see what you like, see whether you like, say, on an American locomotive, whether you prefer, like, as a complement, Blackstone versus coal, whether you prefer Pretty in Pink versus Locometal, whether you prefer Gen 1 versus Gen 2 versus Gen 3 Locometal, right? That sort of thing. Whether you prefer your bogies with or without brass. Um, these different preferences make your locomotive. And of course, there's also the whole thing of like the round wheels versus the octagonal wheels versus the now square wheels that someone's developing, which are very fun. Um, and of course, sure, that's up for opinion as well. But I've not necessarily heard good things about the creator of the round wheels texture pack. And let's be honest, roundness especially does not fit within Minecraft's art style. Um, Which I guess that's another thing to talk about as well, is what specifically fits in Minecraft's art style. Because I've seen a lot of people making these fully Armor's Workshop, fully hand-modeled steam locomotives, or just trains in general. It has been mostly steam locomotives though. I don't think I've seen many diesels, but Minecraft's art style is relatively easy to fall into because really the main two key things are that it's blocky, and if it's not blocky, it's meant to be as blocky and square as possible, right? So obviously octagons don't really fit within Minecraft's art style because you don't really see many octagons whatsoever within the game, right? Mojang has decided to not really put in any kind of octagons or any kind of round shapes. And of course there's pixel art that can kind of go through and recreate round shapes. Like you can even see in the background of this um, that there are bottles on shelves that like have more round basins or round bodies as opposed to square, right? It's like, oh, well, not everything in Minecraft has to be square. I mean, it's true. I don't know why I said that more of a mocking voice. Like, not everything in Minecraft has to be fully square, and that is true, right? It doesn't have to be square, but when you implement these shapes that are round, that are specifically anti-Minecraft, that don't look like they belong within the game, then you create issues, right? And of course, we're playing the Create mod, and Create has gears that spin around, and like you can argue for days and days on whether or not the Create mod like realistically is faithful to Minecraft style or not. I personally believe it is. I really like how it uses a lot of vanilla textures, but generally speaking, um, you want to avoid round shapes, you want to avoid flat colors. Um, if you're looking to get into texturing, right, which is another thing that I've seen an issue with, is people tend to just use the flat locometal textures and apply that to everything because they don't want to be bothered to actually texture their models. Um, if you want to get into texturing, I fully encourage you to do that. It is honestly not that hard. It is very simple. Pixel art is very easy to pick up. That's why a lot of games tend to go for more pixelated art styles, is because pixel art is, I mean, again, it's not like easy, but it's like it is something that is like readily available, that there are guides on how to do all of these kinds of things. Like it is something that you can do. Absolutely. Um, Minecraft style as well is generally pretty specific, and honestly, if you go through and you analyze their textures enough, you can realize how they manifest their palettes, how they do certain things. Crippers as well, who is the artist for Create. Now, I don't agree with all of his decisions for what he did with Create 6.0, but that's a whole nother story. Um, I think that he still does a very, very, very good job at recreating Minecraft's art style, and like, I mean, if you have a chance to talk to him about it, then I would, right? I would, if you have a chance to ask him about how to best create pixel art that like fits within Minecraft, then there you go, right? But for me, how I learned how to do it was just through trial and error, really, and through criticism and through asking my friends if something looked right, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but anyways, I believe that's the bulk of it. I believe that is good enough. I don't think I need to really go through much more. I think I kind of made my point. Basically, don't build boring trains. I mean, you can build boring trains, right? You can build your favorite locomotives. Just do so in a way that doesn't sell itself short. Do so in a way that you feel like really embodies you and what you want to accomplish. And if what you want to accomplish is accuracy, then go for it. But do note that it is more fun to do so when you're putting your own flair into it and when you're trying to give artistic intent. Because, like, obviously, I understand the idea of wanting to just build a train and watch it go, or building your favorite train, building the Norfolk and Western 611, building the Big Boy, building the Sioux Line 1003, building Pennsylvania Railroad 1361, the K4, right? Building your favorite train and watching it go. Building like even just like a CSX diesel, right? I fully understand that, but ultimately it'll be a lot more satisfying if you put hours and hours into these locomotives to really perfect them. Like obviously not everybody has hours and hours, and like I'm not gonna yell at you for building a bad train. Um, at least not anymore. um, I don't know. My point is that I want to help. I want people to excel. I want people to be their best selves. I want people to build their best trains and give it their all, right? Um, yeah. Well, anyways, I hope that this was in some way informative. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that my voice wasn't too laggy. Um, laggy? What a. I hope my voice wasn't too boring. I don't know. I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say anymore. Anyways, well, thank you all for watching. I hope that this was enjoyable. I already went through that whole spiel. Uh, yeah. Well, let's see. Let's go through a quick little what's next for this channel. Um, I want to build some structures. I want to try to build some ideas that I have. I want to build some more locomotives. I want to rebuild some older locomotives I've done. Specifically on my tickets are the K4 and the L3. So essentially the Mohawk and the Pennsylvania Road Pacific. Um, but of course I want to do a few more. I want to do Southern Railway 1401. I want to do a few more. You know, I want to do more trains. I want to do more diesels. I want to do more freight cars and rolling stock. I want to do a coach at some point. The main thing with that is that I do have a few coach styles that I'm very keen on, but I want to build ones that are more accurate to real life, I think, before I go and build a tutorial on them. Um, yeah. Well, anyways, expect more content soon. I can't really promise it's consistent because I'm working two jobs right now, and that's a little rough on me, but you know, is what it is. Well, anyways, love y'all. Have a wonderful night, wonderful day, wonderful afternoon, whatever you're seeing this in, and see ya. Bye bye.